I just wanted to show you these little seesaw affairs because, as you will have picked up, I'm sure, there are a number of neurotransmitters which appear to have the same functions. That's not really that surprising because the functions that we're talking about in the brain are very complex functions, and therefore it makes some kind of sense that there would be a number of different neurotransmitters that are interacting in order to produce the variety of complex responses that our central nervous systems produce. So when we look at a number of disorders, and we really don't have a very good understanding of these disorders at all, sometimes we're really stabbing in the dark, and sometimes we're just figuring things out based on what drugs seem to work. These seesaws are supposed to be indicating in various diseases what neurotransmitters seem to be in excess relative to other ones that seem to be in deficiency. So in depression, for example, I mentioned that there's the monoamine theory of depression, so we've got some monoamines over here. What appears to be the problem in depression is that we're a little bit light on with the monoamines. But because in the control of mood and emotions, the monoamines and acetylcholine appear to oppose each other, you can actually see depression as more of a imbalance, if you like, so a little bit heavy on the acetylcholine, a little bit light on the monoamines. Now, it doesn't mean that in order to get depression you have to have too much acetylcholine. If you just have insufficient monoamine transmission, then you will get this imbalance occurring. But when you look at it this way, it does present the possibility for treating depression either by increasing the activity of these neurotransmitters, or perhaps trying to inhibit the activity of this neurotransmitter in order to bring the thing back into a more balanced situation. What we're seeing here is the reverse of depression, which is mania, and mania occurs in people who have bipolar disorder. They will have periods of depression interspersed with periods of mania where their brain is going 19 to the dozen, they've got all sorts of plans, they don't sleep, they talk 19 to the dozen. It's really the complete opposite of depression, and in terms of the neurotransmitters it seems to go the other way. So you've got your monoamines are a bit heavy on, and another neurotransmitter which we're going to mention in a second, glutamate, also a little bit overactive relative to acetylcholine perhaps, so the opposite really to what happens in depression from the point of view of the neurotransmitters as well. With this one, Parkinson's disease, what seems to be the problem is light on in the dopamine department, which means because dopamine and acetylcholine effects are tending to counterbalance each other, if you haven't got enough dopamine, it will appear that you have too much acetylcholine. So in terms of treating, you perhaps need to increase the dopamine levels and or inhibit the acetylcholine levels. Schizophrenia, interestingly, and we'll talk about this more, appears to be the opposite situation, in that the problem in schizophrenia is a little bit too much dopamine activity in certain areas of the brain, and because again acetylcholine tends to counter the activity of dopamine in those areas, it would appear that it means there's too little acetylcholine activity. So again, in terms of treating that, you could look at it as decreasing the dopamine or increasing acetylcholine.